In the US, wine bottles come with a warning. Contains sulfites. So, are sulfites out to murder you or just vandalize your property? Pop your cork now, it's Pocket Wine School. Hi, I'm Tommy, and right now we're talking about sulfites, what they are, what they aren't, and what they could be if they really applied themselves. Stick around to the end for some options, and if you'd like to up your wine game, click subscribe. When we talk about sulfites, we're actually talking about a cluster of materials, from free sulfur dioxide to sulfurous acid. Little known fact, the sulf in the word sulfites refers to the element sulfur. I know, right? If you've ever heard the phrase fire and brimstone, just know that the brimstone in question is sulfur, the yellow, brittle substance that makes up about 0.5% of the Earth's crust and also a small portion of the atmosphere. So if you see it raining down from the sky, be careful. You may have stumbled into the Old Testament. Sulfur dioxide is formed by burning elemental sulfur, which has a very distinct odor that you'll recognize from that of a struck match. Most notably if you are a smoker or have a difficult time in bathrooms. It's been used for centuries as a disinfectant and a cleaning agent, and even in some circumstances, like paper, it can be used as a bleach, though its effects fade over time. This is one of the reasons why paper turns yellow as it ages, though that could also be from impatient people urinating on library books. It forms ice sheets and ice cubes on the moons of Jupiter, and was also used as a refrigerator coolant in the days before we invented the chlorofluorocarbons that eventually punched a hole in the ozone layer. It's been used to treat hypertension in children, especially those with stressful jobs. It's antimicrobial and antiseptic. It's automatic, systematic, and hydromatic. So what the heck is it doing in your wine? Well, in a very real sense, those sulfites can't help it. Sulfur is a very important part of vine nutrition, and in many cases is already found in the soil. And in a very real sense, all wine is going to contain some level of sulfites, even those wines that advertise that they contain no detectable level of sulfites. But it's more than that. Sulfur dioxide, let's just call it SO2 for a moment and pretend it's a Star Wars droid, plays a very important part in the life of a grape from the moment that it's picked all the way up until the time that it is bottled. See, once that grape is plucked off of the vine, it suddenly becomes a lot more vulnerable to the effects of oxygen. And remember that sulfites are antioxidants, just like those Flintstone vitamins you used to bite the heads off of. This helps keep the grapes safe in transit from the vineyard to the winery. SO2 also kills off bacteria and wild yeast in the winery, making a clean fermentation more likely. The downside to this is that a lot of minimal interventionist winemakers, like natural winemakers, believe it's that wild yeast which helps better represent the terroir.
Chantal, represent.
Additionally, SO2 is used to brighten red wines and to extract a little bit more color and flavor from the skins. A downside to this is that SO2 can also add unwanted aromas to the wines, which has been demonstrated as problematic for people with Toucan Sam-like noses. It's important to remember, though, that these antiseptic, antimicrobial, antioxidant characteristics of SO2 have been noticed not only by winemakers, but all throughout the food and beverage industry, often with much less regulation than with wine. What kinds of foods and beverages, you ask? Dried fruit, sodas, French fries, juice, baked goods, sodas, tea, soup, beer, for heaven's sake. So why are people so fixated on sulfites in wine? The one-word answer is lobbyists. The three-word answer is Strom-Thurmond, probably. A very small but unfortunate number of asthmatics in the 1980s died of sulfur toxicity, 28% of them from fruit at a salad bar. And the late U.S. Senator and militant teetotaler Strom-Thurmond took advantage of the news coverage and forced wineries to slap a contains sulfites label, hoping to scare off drinkers. It worked, but not the way that he expected. It scared up a whole new industry of no and low sulfite wines. Now, I know what you're saying. This video guy's obviously in the pocket of Big Sulfur. Well, they haven't returned any of my calls, so no. But it's important not to get distracted by focusing on the wrong ingredient. Sulfite allergy is a real thing. How do I know this? Because I, a guy who is made up of at least 62% Alianico, have a sulfite allergy. I discovered this as a child one wonderful evening when I ate a forkful of sauerkraut and immediately thought my lungs were catching on fire. More recently, I made the mistake of taking a tiny little bite of a small, yellow Japanese plum from a cute little jar, and my respiratory system sounded like a junkyard dog trying to gnaw his way out of a rusty cage. These are the main symptoms of a sulfite allergy, not headaches. Never once has wine sent me to the hospital. Except that time I got lost on a walk after drinking a box of Franzia. It's not that SO2 isn't toxic. In large enough amounts, it's very toxic. But as the saying goes, attributed to everyone from Paracelsus to Jeff Goldblum, the poison is in the dose. Oxygen is toxic in large amounts. Apple seeds are toxic in large amounts. Reggae is toxic in large amounts. But I'm not here to tell you to stop avoiding them if you want to avoid them. You're not alone, after all, and there are many eager wine producers all over the world who want to give you exactly what you want. Aren't winemakers the best? So first, a little clarification. It's not white wines that are lower in sulfites, it's reds. What? It's true. In a general sense, you are less likely to find high levels of sulfites in red wines than you are in whites, and those are because of the presence of tannins. Tannins are phenolic compounds that give wines their structure. They're also antioxidants, so they're doing the work that SO2 usually does. If you really want to look out for low or no, which I put in some very sturdy quotation marks, sulfite wines, just look for the phrase "no detectable sulfites" on the label. It's not terribly common, but some winemakers, particularly in US markets, do it to grab your eye. Ow. Dude. You can also look for wines that are labeled organic or biodynamic. What is biodynamic? Why, it's the focus for another video, but for right now, let's just think of it as organic plus. Wines labeled organic or biodynamic in the US are not allowed to have any added sulfites and can contain only very little naturally occurring sulfites. European organic and biodynamic wines can contain a little bit more, but not much. Be careful though. The phrase "made from organic grapes" only tells you that the grapes were grown organically. It doesn't tell you anything about how the wine was made. The reverse is true for natural wines. The term natural, aside from being unregulated, really only tells you about how the wines were made. It says nothing about how the grapes were grown. Regardless of which way you choose to go, your best bet for avoiding the headache or other ill effects of wine is to drink some decent wine, have it with some food, alternate it with water, and don't feel like you have to pound that entire magnum just because you opened it. Because if you wake up in the morning with your liver sagging out of your underwear, you can't really blame that on the sulfites. So that's the skinny, by and large, on sulfites, what they are, why they're in wine, and what to do about it. If there are low or no sulfite wines that you recommend, let us know down in the comments. And as always, rock out with your cork out.